This is a short training video just to help advisors and clients understand the trust structures within Kaizen, Enhanced Split Dollar, and Tri-Zen, as they're all essentially the same, so that you can talk with your advisor about what is suited to you and why. We strongly advise you to get legal and tax advice from your advisor when it comes to making decisions on trusts and which one's applicable for you and any tax implications. So first of all, why do we have a trust in Kaizen at all? We are using leverage in Kaizen, and so lenders want a bankruptcy remote standalone vehicle. So think of a trust as a separate legal person, and the policy will be owned by that trust. Now, if you own the policy directly, the bank would actually have to underwrite you for a loan. And so there's their desire for bankruptcy protection, so to speak, and there's also the fact that it's more convenient because it means that we don't have to underwrite you for the loan. There are also protection benefits that you can obtain depending on the trust that you get, and we will cover that in a second. So there are several advantages that you personally pick up from having a trust, but there's also some that the lenders require. All the trusts in Kaizen are in Nevada, and we picked Nevada because one of the things we did for 22 years is work with extremely wealthy people and help them with asset protection and so on. And Nevada is a state that's extremely favorable to trusts for asset protection purposes. So it's a really good state to have a life insurance policy owned by a trust. As a reminder, you don't own the policy, the trust does, and this is to your advantage. Now, Nevada state law protects both the cash value and death benefits of life insurance policy from creditors. When it's inside the trust and the loan is in place, there is further protection, and this is particularly true for revocable trusts, where the policy is assigned to the bank, which really tightens up the asset protection features around it. It is very, very difficult for anybody to touch those policies while it is in a trust with an assignment on it, whether it's revocable or irrevocable. So let's look at the trust structure. So there's two trust structures that exist within Kaizen. There is your trust that we call the insurance trust. So it might be the Daen Insurance Trust. It owns the policy. It controls the distributions to whoever you dictate. The vast majority of people have revocable as opposed to irrevocable trusts, in which case you control it. So it's just a structure that you control that has some protections around it. However, in financing terms, your policy, my policy, and most of these policies would be too small to have an attractive loan. So above the independent insurance trust that you control or is yours, there is something called a master trust. And that is nothing more than an aggregation trust. It has two powers that matters. One is it negotiates the loan, and two, it can assign your policy proportionate to its portion of the loan. So there's ring fencing, there's no cross-contamination. As soon as the loan is paid off, the master trust is gone. It doesn't exist anymore. So it's only there while the loan is in place, and it allows much, much bigger loans to be negotiated, and also means you don't have to be involved in any way, shape, or form with the loan itself. Your policy, your trust doesn't enter the loan, it just assigns its policy. So, master trusts insulates the insurance trust from the lender, does the loan refinancing, all that sort of stuff. It happens behind the scenes so you don't have to get involved in it. With regard to what choices you have on trusts, there are essentially two. Most people want to use a revocable trust. A revocable trust is a completely disregarded entity for the purposes of control. So you have complete control over it. It's disregarded for tax purposes. So for tax purposes, it's treated as you. It has good probate protections. So when you die, a lot of your money, like your personal bank account and stuff, gets tied up for periods of time. This is exempt from probate. So it's really, really good for that. It is the right kind of trust if your Kaizen plan is focused around taking distributions while you're alive in form of policy loans. You want to access the living benefits. You want to have absolute control. all those sorts of things tend to favor you using a revocable trust, but understand that it does limit some of the bankruptcy protections, and it also is going to be included in your estate. So you tend to think of revocable trust for plans that you want to use for your own purposes yourself. An irrevocable trust, again from a kind of lay perspective or a non-legal perspective, is one that you give up control and the trustee controls. Now the trustee is bound by powers that they can only do what they're in the trust document allows them to do. So you name the beneficiaries, if you say that's your wife or your spouse or your children, they're not allowed to do anything else with it. But this is the control doctrine, as the lawyers talk about, is crucially important. Now, you may still take policy loans from that. There's nothing that stops you. It's just you have to ask the trustee, and they will then do policy loans. If you do take a lot of policy loans and do a lot of, I'll call it anything that involves touching the policy while you're alive, the control doctrine will mean that it's really collapsed inside your estate. But if you put it in an irrevocable trust and have a trustee controlling the distributions and policy loans and so on, it'll be stronger for asset protection purposes. If you want it out of your estate, then you don't touch the policy at all. Only the beneficiaries of the plan that are not you would keep it out of your estate. There are some crummy provisions that are not included in the trust fees, and so you need your own counsel to do crummy provisions, get legal advice on that. So irrevocable trusts are really good for assets that you wish to leave to others and very good for asset protection purposes. Again, this is not a legal advice. This is purely just giving descriptions of what typically they're for. Your attorney or your tax attorney will help you with deciding which is best for you. Trust fees. Now, there's a lot of misrepresentation on the trust fees. We're collecting in the 5 payments that you make the trustee fees for the 15 years. So currently, as of today, which is October 2022, those fees are about $450 a year, or the $1,350 of the portion of your 5 contributions. So do the maths, it's $450 a year. It's extraordinarily low for a national trust company to be doing it for that. This covers all the normal activities included in the Kaizen, Tri-Zen, enhanced split dollar plans. Only if you do exceptional requests above the normal, which are laid out, would you have any additional costs. So if you started putting assets inside your trust and other assets and started trading and all those sorts of things, they may incur additional costs. The trustee. The trustee is kind of like your guardian. They are appointed on your behalf so that you don't have to worry about the administration of your trust. They are bound by regulation and have to follow the rules that you are laying out in your trust document, which are kind of laid out for you. They're not allowed just to do whatever they want. But what they do is make sure that the trust is following the rules that it was set up to do and follows the wishes that you set up when you created the initial trust. They only control the trust if it's an irrevocable. When it's a revocable trust, well, I wish they could have come up with better names than that. When it's a revocable trust, they are your administrator, but they don't control it, you do. When it's irrevocable, they do control it. So think of them as your guardian that's making sure the plan is doing what it's supposed to be doing and taking away the administrative work that you do not wish to do. A question that sometimes comes up is, can multiple policies be owned in one trust? And yes, you can, but there's some limitations. They must be in the same tranche. Remember, we have lots of different banks we use, and different banks are financing different tranches, so you can't have a situation where multiple policies in different tranches with different banks trying to argue over the assets of one trust. And you need the beneficiaries to be the same. So this would be couples who want to leave assets for their children, couples who might be using it to supplement their retirement but want living benefits available for both of them. You might use it for key man or buy-sell applications where the beneficiary is the company or something like that. You might use it to fund deferred compensation plans or family trusts. You can do it But keep in mind that the beneficiaries need to be the same and the tranche needs to be the same. So it's a much more efficient way of doing it if, for example, you had a key man program with 4 or 5 people and the beneficiaries all going to go to the company. Post-loan exit, what happens to my trust? Now, if you are in a revocable trust, you can dissolve the trust, you can do whatever you like. The fees are paid up until the 15th year. After that, the trustee will contact you and say, hey, do you want me to continue doing the administration for this? And it's at the time, this time it's around $250 a year. So most people will just say, fine, that's whatever, it's nothing. You don't have to have that trustee. You can appoint another trustee, you can do whatever you like really, because you control your trust. If it's an irrevocable trust, you can still move to a different trustee. You don't want to dissolve the trust, or it's more complicated to do so, and you should get legal advice. So the trust is, after the 15th year and after the bank loan has been repaid, is essentially for you to determine what you want to do with it, unless it's outside your estate, in which case you can have another trustee. There is the option on irrevocable trust to have a trust protector, and that's a person who makes sure that your wishes are followed out without you having too much control of the trust and collapsing it into your estate. I hope you found this helpful. If you have any questions or require any further information, please contact info@niwcorp.com.